all speak up, reduce sound, stay competitive in voice domain market. This has been an introduction, but besides again, we have three well-qualified speakers. Mr. Michael Crusoe, which is the CEO of GTEL Mobile in Vietnam. We have Mr. Idris Tivazi, CEO of DSG Group. And last but not least, the head of business development for mobile services at Velcom International Services in Singapore, Mr. Oscar Lee. Okay, I think it's a quite difficult topic because I mean, I have seen well, I haven't got an answer yet, for this topic. Basically, got a problem, a very big problem. Majority of our customers do not buy phone for making voice call anymore. Actually, they don't really buy phone. Yeah, they buy, I think it's called entertainment device, with the phone function. And on this device, they can do many things. They can play with the application like gaming, watching videos, using their social application like Facebook, Twitter. Basically, the innovation from the so-called OTT players. But what's wrong with that? I mean, the thing is, some application is allowing cutting into the voice service, voice revenue of the operators because it's allowing customers to place a call for very little cost or even free. But the bigger problem is that every operator is allowing it because they think that that's what customer wants. So we have to offer it, even though they can make money on just the data usage, which is very little, I think. So the concern is that operators getting too little for their own network. What can we do to sustain the profitability for voice and messaging services? And how we can make them more appealing so that we can fight back with the OTT players. I believe that's a topic for the discussion. So I would like to maybe get your opinion, maybe your view on this topic and the situation in your organization. Maybe start with you, Michael.
Okay. So OTT, interesting topic. I mentioned on the panel before that, yeah, smartphones, of course, play a big role in this, and it's no shocker that data is becoming more and more important. And these smartphones sure are a double-edged sword, right? Because subsidizing smartphones cuts into your profitability. Obviously, you gain maybe customer loyalty, you protect your RPU on one side, but on the other side, you also put OTT players with every smartphone in a better position to give us more trouble. And it's going to be really, really tough on the long term competing with them. Because, OTT has so many advantages over things like RCS. Right? I mean, the time to market is so fast and it's global and it's not limited by the access network. Everything the operators can come up with is, either only on my network or only on my phone. If it's BlackBerry messaging, it's only BlackBerry to BlackBerry, and if it's, Telefonica goes with their OTT platform, it's just for Telefonica. All of these make us eventually a competitive disadvantage over the OTT players, and I believe that there's lots of things we can do to fight this, but again, in nature, it's all tactical. We've tried to protect our voice revenue. In my case, what I see depends on where I sit. I sit in emerging markets. I really tend to believe that as an industry, we have a tendency to overestimate the speed of change in our industry and to underestimate the impact of change. So I think a lot of the doomsayers that voice is going away, especially from emerging markets perspective, there is still a lot of water in the glass, and there's a lot of money to be made. But realistically speaking, at one point it will stop. So basically we have cancer. We have the chance to apply chemo or not to apply chemo. Right? We can just, you know,
let we die anyway.
Well, unfortunately, we have more than one life, right? So we have the option of coming up with new business models, and I think whether it's, you know, RCS, whether it is new value-added services, all of this is horizontal expansion. All of these things are important, and they will protect our overall profitability. But this will manage the decline of voice to a degree that gives us time to come up with new business models. And there will have to be new business models in the future that circle around M2M, cloud computing, etc., etc. And that's where the answer has to come from. The answer that we have to answer at the moment, I think, with OTT threat is, who is going to pay for the data? That's the billion-dollar question. Because right now it's us. And that's not going to work on the long term, right? Does really everybody have to be capable of streaming everything in HD at every time, wherever they are? If the answer to this question is yes, we're in trouble, right? Of course we can block access to OTT and YouTube and like this, and then the whole net neutrality faction will come screaming out of it. So I don't think that this is going to be really feasible. The question will really be, in the end, the customer will have to pay for it, and the question is he willing to pay for it? And before I was saying in the other panel that a benefit of working for emerging markets is that we have time to go to school or more developed markets. But one of the downturns of many of our markets is the low purchase power and the low RPUs. Now, if you're in a market like the UK or the US, and you can get $50 RPU by moving from voice to data, okay. Well, I think there will be business models that are perfectly sustainable, even if you are a dumb pipe or a smart pipe, but that can work. But if you're working in markets where the RPU is $3 to $10, it will not work. For $3 to $10, you will not stream everything in HD anytime, anywhere, wherever you are. So for me, I really believe we will need, you know, on the short term to mid-term, very differentiated price plans on the speed, bandwidth, access, and decide, okay, how much can you really get for what you're willing to pay here? And for me, this is the key concern.
Okay, we can go further the question on the business model, and but just want to get your view, from interest that in your organization, how was your experience with the threat from the OTT players? Can you share that?
I think the threat from OTT players, for those of you who are in Barcelona and you listen to the various CEOs over there, starting from the very large telcos or mobile operators like Vodafone or Bharti, etc., down to smaller ones such as myself, the problem is fairly similar, right? It's essentially a problem that all mobile operators are facing because we are the ones who are making all the capex investments, tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars to upgrade the infrastructure, but we are not partaking in the revenue stream. So the revenue, the increase or incremental data revenue is not keeping pace with the capex investments. We have to make capex investments because otherwise network performance goes down. Then the regulator steps in also. The regulators in most, at least in most developed countries, are stepping in and enforcing very stringent QoS criteria, quality of service criteria. Just take an example of Singapore, for example. Not only have they raised the fines for non-compliance, but they've actually made the compliance bar higher. And in Brunei, a similar situation is unfolding. So yes, the threats from OTT is very real. Status quo for telcos or mobile operators just will not work. We have to look at new business models, and hopefully we have to look at something like revenue sharing with these OTTs. Now, revenue sharing with OTT may work if you're a very large player. It may or may not work if you're a smaller player. Right? So this whole business is about scale. But it's an evolving business model, but certainly one thing is very true, that status quo won't work. So telcos, mobile operators worldwide have to look at different ways of addressing this issue.
Okay, I understand that now. Well, we simply have the OTT players, competing with us. Well, the voice revenue down, but actually the usage is up. So I think, well, Oscar, you work in the carrier business, so you can experience that there's a lot of data usage from operators who deploying 3G, and they have like the OTT player on top of their services. So what is your view on this?
I guess first of all, just to perhaps position myself vis-a-vis these two gentlemen, as opposed to operators, I'm a carrier. So from that perspective, the OTTs for us is an opportunity rather than a threat. And the question is, do we recognize it? How do we address it? And do we see it as something that's going to happen anyway? I did some, well, what the reality today is that increasingly we see more line subscriptions, less line subscriptions, more mobile subscriptions around the world, right? So more people are carrying a handset rather than being tied to a fixed line. And out of the handsets, a lot more of them are becoming smartphones if they can afford it in the country. So with the smartphones, the OTT. So this is the reality, right? And what we also see is that perhaps what used to be geek to geek, a guy sitting in front of a computer talking to another guy sitting in front of a computer, what was called geek to geek is now person to person, right? It is acceptable. It is acceptable to talk into a machine so that the other guy, the other machine talks to you, right? Previously it was something that geeks do. So that's the other reality. The third reality is, in 1996, the traffic in the world is predominantly, apart from probably some geek-to-geek traffic, TDM. Everybody calls from a fixed line or a mobile phone off a TDM network onto a TDM network onto a POS. Now, we have probably 40% TDM traffic, 30% P2P or geek-to-geek traffic, right? And then the other 30% is IP to TDM, right? So we have the 40% that's given, we try to protect it. The IP to IP traffic, there's the OTT play. We probably can't touch it at the moment, right, except for bandwidth. So as a carrier, we recognize that there is a 30% market out there that we need to address. And this 30% market is probably all still growing. You see Skype, you see Google Voice, you see OTT players recognizing that their customers too want to call somebody on a fixed line. Their customers want to call somebody on a mobile phone. It's not always they want to call somebody on a, well, provided the mobile phone is not a smartphone. They want to do that, right? So how do we enable that? And that for us as a carrier is the market. So it's reality. I mean, it's like it or not, it's there. So then we come to the next stage where we address the trends. Are we looking at increasing revenues? Are we looking at dropping revenues? The fact is that it is dropping revenues, right? So the OTT players are pushing the revenues down because they're offering an alternative that the TDM players used to say it costs you $1 to call US. Now I can call it for free, so why should I pay you the money, right? So the TDM players, the carriers, the operators will come up with something that says, it's actually worth paying me a little bit of money to do that, right? And how do we facilitate that? And what is that value that you add? It's quality of voice, it's reliability, maybe, or it's something else they can throw into the mix. And for us as a carrier, it's how do we facilitate that? How do we make that happen? How do we make the cost of delivering that cheaper for the operators? To make them say, hey, look, this is a whole market that you're not addressing, revenue stream that you're not getting. We can help you get that revenue stream by bridging the IP to TDM gap.
You want to add that, Michael?
What is worrying me the most when I look at OTT players is the tremendous value destruction that is happening. Because if you take a player like Skype, who is global leader in minutes, but makes less than $1 billion in turnover, you ask yourself, where did the money go? And where did the money go? And this is I mean, I understand that, the times where you could charge $1 for a minute call to America, this is gone. Because whenever your price is not related to cost, that's when interlopers come in, right? And any market in the world will see this. So I think this is a little bit the good old days that I don't think we can cry about it, that it's not going to come back. But we have gone from one extreme to the other. We have gone from extremely high margin business to players who monetize very poorly. If the global leader in minutes does not make $1 billion, then there's something wrong with the industry. And I think the challenge here really is, I agree with him on this, right? They need to monetize better, and that's an opportunity for the carriers, and that's an opportunity even for us, because I think this is a dialogue that should happen, because in the end, the business model of Skype is currently terribly inefficient.
The CEO of Cisco, John Chambers, about 12 years ago, my ex-company, about 12 or 13 years ago said voice would be free. Right? This was way back in 1999. And he shocked a lot of operators. Right? But it is essentially coming true. If you look at Skype, if you look at Gtalk, if you look at Viber, for the most part, for consumers at least, voice is free. It's not free for the operators, because operators then have to spend money on the infrastructure, provide the service, provide the last mile, provide the access, provide RF, etc. But for consumers, it's a boom. And this was identified, like I said, many years ago, and essentially it's coming true. So now what we have to figure out is how do we stay in business? Because this is sort of a negative spiral. If operators stop spending money on CapEx, or if operators decrease the amount of spending on CapEx, the vendors will be impacted. The Ericssons, the Alcatel-Lucent, the Huawei's, NSN, you've already seen where they are right now. So they'll be impacted, the quality of service will go down, so eventually consumers will also get impacted. So because our shareholders do not want to see decreasing revenues and increased CapEx. And that's true for every operator.
I think we in the industry where we have so much usage, but the revenue going down, yeah, that actually is pretty bad. But there's some operators who try to find that, particularly they come up with internet-based voice services, like some operators like Telefonica. So some consider that it's a direct challenge to Skype, and Google. So just wonder when this makes sense, for operator to maybe try to do something by themselves, and fight back.
Yeah, I mean, fight back with these decreased revenues and the challenges from OTT.
Yes.
But again, it's a question of figuring out a business model that works, right? Certainly, revenue sharing works. Now the question is, can you get the OTTs on the table? Now, if you are a very large operator, you have scale, it may be possible. It's more challenging if you're a smaller operator. But I think also a lot of our operators are also looking at various schemes like PCRF, policy control, for example. So operators globally are moving away from all-you-can-eat or unlimited data plans, because everyone is realizing that this is unsustainable. In Brunei, for example, we give away our lowest tier is 1.5 gig, moves to 5, and then from 1.5 moves to 5 gig. Right? Very few people actually consume more than 5 gig. There is a small percentage of so-called power users who are streaming video who do consume a lot of bandwidth, more than 5 gig, and they impact the 90% of the other people who don't. So that's where policy control comes in. And a lot of operators are looking at deploying that so that you don't let 5 or 10% of the users impact 90% of the users. So certainly there are ways of providing high qualities of service and looking at various other policy control mechanisms and working with the OTT players to guarantee that their subscribers get the right quality of service. And then looking at CDN type of deployments as well to sort of alleviate the pressure on your networks.
So, we talked about that operator type try to come up with a new business model, right? But well, maybe they need a new innovation, maybe for the traditional voice and messaging services. So Oscar, can you share with us, is there any new innovation in the voice space? Perhaps, yeah.
I'm not sure if there's any new innovations recently. I think part of the cause of that is that voice is becoming cheap, free, and it impacts the operators, it impacts the equipment providers, the vendors, and what the effect of that is that the vendors end up in a price war themselves and do not see the value of investing in any more new innovations in that sense. So from the technology perspective, probably not a lot of new innovations will be coming up. The innovations I would see is probably more from the business model, more from the consumer offerings, what you can offer, and how you can deliver value. One example is interesting. I was talking to somebody who was running a YouTube-like website in China, right? There's quite a few big ones, and Youku was just sold for lots of money. They're not sure whether it's making money, but they just sold lots of money. So this other website decided, let's not play that game. Let's grow the market another way. So what they've done essentially is they've let their users put up videos on YouTube, on the website, right? And they've embedded advertisements into them. So these users who put up videos get paid every time somebody accesses that website or that video content, right? So perhaps for voice, that could be the way you go. Instead of making someone pay to make a call, pay that person to make a call, get the revenue from somewhere else, grab some advertisers, instead of ringtone, an advertisement. You're going to listen to the true sound anyway, so why not hear a message, right? Get that, advertisers pay for it, you keep part of the revenue goes to the guy says, don't call me on Skype, call me on this phone, right? I get paid for this. Perhaps that's an option. Or perhaps work on the value of your quality of voice, right? A person-to-person conversation is probably easy to handle, but a person-to-many, one-to-many conversation is probably harder. Maybe that's something that needs to be developed more, right? People call in, people pay to listen to somebody talk, right? That's voice minutes. Right? So it's probably, in that sense, it's another way of looking at where the money is in the business. That's on the retail level. From the wholesale level, I would say the way we approach it is we recognize that, well, the whole idea of having voice over IP, right, is reality. And we do less TDM because it will probably cost less to do voice over IP anyway. But how do we transmit the value to the operators? So this whole idea of saying, instead of selling in minutes, instead of doing minutes transitions, why don't I just give you a flat bandwidth? You can use it to do your voice, right? I'll just charge you for the management of it. So that's another way of saying, okay, let's embrace this whole innovation thing, technology thing. Look at it in a different way, right? And see where the revenue is, rather than fighting over. Let's discuss over 0.0002 cents and spend half an hour negotiating it.
Yeah, that's well.
I'm sure if that answers your question.
So it's a tough question. Well, I mean, the thing we try to think out of the box, maybe come up with a new business model. Maybe something that Oscar just mentioned. Maybe the operator can apply that. So on my goal, if you talk about that, we have to somehow think out of the box, right? So as an operator, so to do that, somehow you have to focus on some area in your organization to make sure that the organization is equipped, to come up with a new business model, with a new innovation that can compete. So which area that the telco should focus to stay competitive?
Well, I believe that every innovation starts with the customer, right? And understanding what the customer wants. And I think in many markets it's clear that the customer still does not have and still does not get what he wants. The customer, nobody wakes up in the morning and says, oh, I wish the minute price for calls was a bit cheaper. Nobody ever. No customer in the world woke up like this. People wake up and think like, I want to talk as much as I want to. That's the inside. They don't want to pay you. They want to pay, but I don't think that the paying is the issue. The being charged per minute and having to worry how much I'm going to pay in the end, this is the issue. The customer is willing to pay. The customer is not willing to pay for every little extra. I think the customer wants to talk when he wants to talk. He wants to SMS when he wants to SMS. He wants to stream when he wants to stream. And you know, this is along those lines that we have to think innovation, because the customer still doesn't get everything that he wants. You know, like throttling, talking about throttling. And we can do this now because it's still acceptable. There will come a time when this will simply be not acceptable for the customer. Where does it end, right? How far, where is the real customer need? Is that how much, you know, speed and bandwidth do you really need, right? I think there will be a time very quickly where 2 gigs, 3 gigs is not going to cut it anymore, right? And this is really the challenges that we have, right? I think on product design there's a lot that can be done. You know, advertisement, paid calls, these kind of things is one idea. Personally, I'm pretty critical of it because I think that, you know, in the end you want quality advertisement. You want people that, as an advertiser, people are interested in your products and call and make the action afterward. Whereas when you're what I've seen on, you know, paid calls by advertisement, people just exactly yada 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 yada. I wait until it's over because what I really want to do is make the call, right? I think, you know, the Google approach with their, you know, click to call and their embedded advertising, this is a lot smarter, right? And they get good results with it. So, but it is the possibility, and we need to keep looking at this. I still think there's a lot of juice in the value-added service tank. I think mid-term to long-term value-added service is going to go the way voice goes. You know, with OTT application writers going global cloud computing, there will be a time where you can't charge for these things anymore. So it's just a matter of time, but it'll happen afterwards. Right? In Vietnam, we make 35% of our revenue with value-added services. This is very high, you know, by any international standard. So I really believe there's juice in the tank from in emerging markets, more basic services. You know, we up to things like e-medicine. You know, where you have areas, for instance, where people don't have access to doctors, right? So you call in, you know, you get a long distance diagnosis, long distance medication. These are things very interesting for the government, you know, very interesting for national health, and they can be monetized, right? So I think there's you know, the gauntlet's been thrown down to the operators, and by understanding customer needs, we'll be able to continue to monetize. But again, you know, it's midterm.
Well,
a sub $75 smartphone would help in those kind of services, right? Because when you're providing services to rural areas, of course, smartphones are not prevalent over there, so it can just be a voice call. So yes, you can monetize voice, but if you really want to monetize data, of course, you don't want to squeeze the rural people also, because they are not that wealthy to begin with. So there needs to be a PPP partnership, right? So you need to work with the government, and the government, for the government to provide services to rural areas. That's the aim of every government, at least in this part of the world. So you just work with them and help them provide these services to hard to reach, hard to access areas, and also what you did. For example, when you went to China and did an analysis or for the supply chain, where you sourced some cheap phones, initiatives like that will help a lot.
That's a very good point. Well, we understand that we have to look at the customers, you know, see what they need, come up with a new innovation. But they actually need more and more. going to say 3 gig, 4 gig is not going to be enough anymore. So, but to provide that type of service to them, we have to invest, right? So, for the operators, micro operators, how are we going to manage the investment, for the new platform, new product? Maybe getting less and less money. So.
Yeah, I mean, certainly it is challenging, right? Because if you look at most operators right now, they have a 2G network and a 3G network, and a lot of them are going after LTE networks as well. So a lot of operators have 3 parallel networks running. In our case, certainly that's the case. We have a 2G, 3G, and we are running through our LTE trials right now, and we'll be deploying an LTE network sometimes towards the end of the year. So yes, cost is a big challenge. And while you are deploying your LTE network, you are at the same time in parallel also upgrading your 3G network, right? From 7.1 to 14.4 to 21 to 28, etc. Because the majority of your customers who are getting services are still on 3G. So yes, this is a big challenge because, like I said, your revenue streams are flatlining, your voice is flatlining, your SMS is flatlining, actually decreasing because of these over-the-top players. So again, this is where I don't think anyone has a bad answer right now. This is what all operators, mobile players are struggling with, on how to get revenue streams. But certainly everyone talks about value-added services, right? But then you have to figure out where. Mobile health is one thing, mobile commerce is another thing we are looking at. Working with the governments to provide services in hard-to-reach areas is another revenue stream. So these are just 3 examples out of many that we need to look at. If your vast revenue in Vietnam is 35%, that's excellent. Most countries don't have that.
Yeah, I think the challenge really here is we have you say you have 3 networks now, but you still have the same customer base. Exactly. Your investments have gone up because before you were servicing all these people with one network, right? Now the hunger or the data hunger of the customers is going up, so suddenly we find ourselves with 3 networks. And again, it brings me back to the old question, who is going to pay for the data? Right? We're in a situation where, in most industries, the latest generation always costs the same. The newest cameras on the market, the newest car, the newest TV, the newest computer, for the last 20 years, always has the same price. Right? And people are very used of getting the next generation gadget for the same price as the previous one. Right? New iPad comes out, same price as the old one. Right? It's the old one that gets cheaper, but the new one doesn't come at a higher price. The newest smartphone is always going to be between $600 to $900. But we have a situation where if people really want 5 gigs, 6 gigs, 7 gigs a month, I cannot accommodate this ever in $3 per month or RPU. It's not going to work. It's not going to be that these people have to spend 30% more. No, they will have to spend 3 times, 4 times, 5 times this more. As I said, for the UK, for Hong Kong, for Russia, for the US, this is not going to be that much of an issue. If your ARPU is big enough, you will manage. But for the lower purchase power markets, for me the solution will be, at least for the short to midterm, that we come up with very differentiated price plans on data, along the speed bandwidth axis and saying, okay, 3G in Laos will mean something different than it means in the UK. Right? You will not stream in HD YouTube on the way to work. At least not for $3 you won't.
Well, I think in the discussion we're talking about some OTT player which is quite popular, and their business model is very bad, just like you said. But actually, quite popular. They get a lot of traffic. So maybe that should be the situation that we should partner with them, right? I mean, we will also have some strong points. For example, I think for the operator, we have a better billing system. We having a customer service that closer to customer support, closer to our customers. So maybe somehow we can. Is that the situation, or whether it makes sense, for operator to partner with them? Is that? Someone would like to answer that?
Well, I think it makes sense, right? I mean, as I said, I think the efficiencies realized by the OTT players are not very exciting.
Yeah.
Obviously, their cost structure is considerably lower, right? So they can say, I'm happy with this. But still, I find it worrying if the world leader in minutes, runs on 600 million revenue. Right? This is worrying for the overall industry. I agree with Idris that definitely, I think both parties could benefit sitting together, right? Because the unilateral, okay, I'm going to restrict access to these guys. If you pay, this is going to trigger the revolution in the net neutrality faction, right? So I think a dialogue between both players certainly would make sense.
I agree, Michael. I mean, it's back to, you mentioned that the traditional players or the carriers are probably closer to the customer with customer service, with billing systems, more efficient billing systems, and the OTT people may not have it. So I guess Michael's point, the OTT players too have a need for certain types of services, right? How do you recognize it? And as an operator, how do you monetize your advantages in these areas, right? One example recently come across is that the OTT, some of these OTT, Facebook, for example, social networking sites, they want to send SMSs from their website, right? The first reaction to the mobile operators is, hold on, that's eating into my revenue. That's my SMS business, right? But put it this way, it's always going to be there. And if it happens on a computer-to-computer level, you will never touch it, right? But there is also a need for them, perhaps 30, 40, 50%, I don't know, of their SMSs, they need to go to a mobile operator, a mobile handset, right? And they need that access. IP to mobile may not work all the time for them, so for them they need something more reliable. Perhaps they need something like a SS7 signaling to carry that through. OTT people don't have that. They don't have the infrastructure to do it. They need help from mobile operators, and that's when mobile operators can come in and say, okay, that's fine, I can let you use my network, right? But it won't be free. I'll charge you for it, a reasonable sum, and we can make a business out of this. So I think along those lines, along that thinking, rather than saying, no, you shall not come in, it is my territory, you shall not come in. Right? They will come in somehow, right? Just say, come in, but pay a fee.
Oscar raised a very interesting point here. This is who owns the customer. Right? We always say we own the customer, but so does the electricity company. Right? Just because we have the billing relationship, that doesn't make us own the customer. Right? I think in the past we did own the customer, right? But I think already now you see things have moved on to, in many cases, I think it's the terminal manufacturer who owns the customer. Because if the iPhone is coupled with this provider, people will change because they want the iPhone, right? So who really owns the customer? And I think somewhere not too far down the line, or maybe in some cases already starting now, it's Facebook who owns the customer. Nobody knows more about the customer than Facebook, right? And people go online to do Facebook, right? So if Facebook wants to send SMSs, right, maybe the right part is to say not just, yes, I cooperate, but to go even further and say, okay, I'm not going to charge you per SMS. You make a revenue from your advertising, and you just cut me in, right? And you know, I think there needs to be openness from all players to cooperations here, because we can't definitely, at least we cannot say anymore that we are the only ones who own the customer. Certainly, handset manufacturers and even the social networks, you know, they own the customer.
Very good point, Michael.
I think just to add on to Michael's point, and in reference to Idris' point earlier, well, it's good that you can approach Facebook and say, let's look at a modern, let's do it. The question is, would Facebook be talking to 600-700 mobile operators around the world? No, right? So that's where I'm plugging. That's where Big's coming, right? That's where we help you do a business model, make sense of it, monetize it for you, make sense for Facebook, and get it to work.
Okay, we have about 5 minutes left, and I'm interested to Here's a question from the audience. Do you guys have a question? Something that maybe give us the idea, how we can come up with a business, new business model or new innovation that can basically compete with the OTT or maybe partner with it, if we can. Anyone? Okay, we have one. Thank you. Tough topic.
Hi. I understand the carrier IP voice is becoming harder and harder to make money nowadays. So, just wondering, is there any thinking in the carrier voice leader like this or some other ones that maybe instead of charging, making money from voice minute, maybe like what I think Michael just mentioned, try to get revenue share from the Facebook. But usually Facebook they won't give you revenue share. They just want free SMS. That's how they will approach most of the mobile operator. So is there a discussion in the carrier community or something that about changing the charging model from a minutes to a advertisement model or something, so you can get money by yourself instead of having to beg for a share from Facebook, for example?
And I think the first shot at it, right? So some operators are looking at, let's call it a closed type model within the country, where they're offering their users a fixed monthly rate. So instead of using airtime, they're actually using the data bundles for making calls. And the operators themselves are offering this for a monthly charge, for a fixed monthly charge, right? So again, some of the comments made by Michael and Oscar was if what a consumer cares about is deterministic pricing, right? Knowing what he or she is paying and if it's deterministic. So that's what some of the operators are moving towards from a new business model perspective. There are so many things in play right now, right? Because over the last, this is a relatively new phenomenon. Smartphones have really only started taking off over the last 2 or 3 years. In fact, since Apple first came out with its first iPhone, right? That's when then the Android and the Samsungs of the world also started coming up with better and better smartphones. So this is a relatively new phenomenon, and operators globally are struggling to look at many different models. But there is certainly some movement to have a more deterministic pricing model. That's number one. Number two, operators in Europe actually last year, the big ones, Deutsche Telekom, Vodafone, etc., announced that they're going to form a consortium to perhaps even define a mobile operating system, right? So that they are not dependent on the Googles and the iPhones or the Androids, iPhone, iOS, etc. However, it's easier said than done. Large operators find it very difficult to work with each other. These are all huge players, and often they're at each other's throats in different countries. Right? So while the announcement was made that the large European players are going to get together and form a consortium, I don't think much has been done. So it's very much work in progress.
I think as an industry, we are not particularly apt at concentrated actions. And even though this might make a lot of sense and increase the bargaining power of the industry considerably, but yeah, we have to be open for new business models, for sure. Even if you say Facebook, I mean, Facebook has applications, where you get your Facebook updates via SMS, right? And this is particularly interesting in emerging markets, where smartphone penetration is still very low, and they only insist that the service be free for a certain period of time. After this, you can charge for it, right? So there is ways to monetize even in cooperation with Facebook, and long term, I tell you, Facebook will need to monetize better. And after the IPO, the valuations that they are, commanding right now, with the revenue they're making, is a big gap. And the investment community is not going to accept this gap forever. So they will start to find ways to, they will have to start to find ways quickly to monetize better. And I hope that, you know, in the end, this is developments that's going to bring people at the table, right? At Barcelona, we had the CEO of Nokia giving a little speech saying, okay, you know, the internet is organized around what, right? Social network is organized around who? Now, they want to answer the question of where, because they think there's money in answering the question of where, right? I would tell him, if that's what you want to do, then buy Foursquare, right? Because they were sitting right next to him, the CEO of Foursquare. I think, like, if that's really what you want, go talk to the guy, right? And you know, there might be months because your Foursquare, you know, if handset manufacturers or operators, for that matter, would start acquiring players like this, you know, there definitely, you know, might be an emergence of new business models around that.
Right, I think I'll answer Dr. Tipon's question on a carrier level, wholesale carrier level. For sure, we are looking at a rapidly decreasing revenue or margin per minute. The minute business, as far as we're concerned, is probably where it's almost unsustainable. So the way we see it is that we're going to move away from that. We want to try to move away from that. And the IP technology, the IP voice, allows us to do that. So in future, it's probably going to be a flat fee per bandwidth model where you buy the bandwidth, you use whatever you need. If you need more bandwidth, you pay for more bandwidth, you use whatever you need, and we'll just charge you a flat fee for that. And that may be the way to go forward. Of course, when something like that happens, it rings a death knell for a lot of the other players that are always built their models on per minute basis, and they do not run the infrastructure to do it. It's always, you know, I've got an IP connection to you, I've got an IP connection to you, I do the business, I charge for it, and now they do not have that infrastructure to bang the business on. Then what we do see is probably instead of the big boys getting together and talking and say, let's agree on something, it'll probably be one big boy buying another big boy and ending up with a handful of big boys and nothing else.
Well, time is up, and if there's more questions, I would like to thank you, the speakers, you know, for your valuable opinions, and thank you, the audience, for your attention. Thank you.